My name is Dr. Tabibzadeh, and I'm going to speak to you about why we need to include fibers in our diet. If you have heard of the term fibers, you might wonder what it is, but you're surrounded by fibers. Whether you're talking about cotton or the fabric that makes your clothing, they're all made of natural fibers. Fibers generally represent the products that exist in the cell wall of plant cells. These cellulose fibers are themselves made of smaller fibrils called macrofibrils, and then those are comprised of smaller microfibrils, and these are chains of cellulose molecules, and each cellulose molecule is made of glucose that are bound together. The fibers in plant cells are either linear cellulose or branch starch. In mammalian cells, similar fibrils is present, named glycogen. Glycogen is stored in cells as a source of energy. Cellulose, starch, and glycogen are polymers of glucose, which makes small microfibrils, and these microfibrils make fibers. There are fibers that have to be included in our diet in order for us to maintain health in our gastrointestinal tract and other organs. These are listed here. These fibers are added generally to food, for example, those that are viscous, so then it can increase the viscosity of the food. Some fibers are soluble, and some are fermentable by the microbiome in our gastrointestinal tract. The American Dietetic Association recommended fiber intake is about 5 grams for children, and this need increases for adults to 20 to 35 grams per day. Now let's talk about the importance of inclusion of fibers in our diet. Unfortunately, as we get older, our metabolism slows down, and even if you eat the same food and the same amount of calorie, we continue to gain weight, and this fat is stored first in the belly fat and then the other organs. Inclusion of fibers in the diet is important because fibers are not digestible, and for this reason they don't add to the calorie intake of an individual. They can be used as food and food substitutes in order not to feel hunger but allow the person to lose weight. Eating a lot of leafy vegetables is necessary in order for us to get rid of some of the toxins that might exist in the food that we eat. However, the portions that we must include in our diet is so much that most adults, they don't include them in sufficient quantities to have such a natural detoxification effect. This detoxification effect is because the fibers increase the transit of food across the epithelial membranes, and for that reason the food doesn't have even the opportunity to be absorbed, including the toxins. Another attribute of fibers is that they encourage the microbiome that exists in our gastrointestinal tract. Over 2,200 different species of bacteria and fungi and other organisms live within our gastrointestinal tract. Almost 2.5 kilograms of these bacteria occupy the inside of our body, and for that reason it acts and behaves like an organ, and it has a significant impact on health and longevity. You have to bear in mind that the quality of the microbiome within our gut, it is our own discretion. Generally, we can divide them into two categories: a good microbiome that affects health positively, and the bad microbiome that causes disease. For example, eating meat, which supports the bad microbiome, generally produces toxic substances such as cadaverine, putrescine, The bad odor of the mouth and bad breath are some of the manifestations of having a bad microbiome. In addition, these toxic substances are toxic to our cells, and over time, such a bad microbiome actually participates in development of diseases as diverse as diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, some cancers, obesity, and mood. Such a large number of diseases should be horrifying to anyone who entertains the possibility of having a bad microbiome. In contrast to meat, vegetables and the fibers that they contain promote the development of a good microbiome. The cellulose, pectin, and other fibers that exist in vegetables are the substances that bacteria can use in order to ferment them and produce very useful chemicals such as 3-hydroxybutyrate. Also, you can develop a good microbiome by using and including probiotic bacteria as a supplement in your food. A good microbiome actually interacts with our body and prevents the developments of such disorders as high blood pressure, disorders of central nervous system, anxiety, depression, autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, memory loss, cholesterol increase, diarrhea, eczema, development of Campylobacter pylori infection, Crohn's disease, lactose intolerance, urinary tract. And it has many, many other effects, particularly on our brain. It improves our mood, improves our memory, improves the function of pancreas and liver, and also reduces the energy expenditure by cells. And for these reasons, eating fibers is essential to having normal, healthy diet that protects us against all kinds of diseases. The 3 of the ketone bodies are shown, and among them I highly recommend that you make sure that you have adequate amount of beta-hydroxybutyric acid. Beta-hydroxybutyric acid is a byproduct of the fermentation of leafy vegetables. The cellulose in leafy vegetables is actually a food for the microbiome, and it's converted to beta-hydroxybutyric acid. You can purchase the beta-hydroxybutyric. The options to increase the total beta-hydroxybutyrate that we receive every day can be increased either by following a keto diet. Starvation for most of us is very difficult, and for this reason is not a choice that most adults can do. You can eat enough vegetables, and if you don't, you get constipation. You have to resort to fiber supplement, Metamucil, or you can just buy and use a butyrate as a supplement. At Zero Calorie and me, we have started the tradition to provide the sufficient quantity that an adult needs every day by providing the fiber, and in addition it can be used as a food that does not add to the total calorie intake. 63 million, almost 15% of the population of the United States suffer from constipation. There are many reasons for constipation, but one of the main reasons is the lack of adequate dietary fiber. When you include sufficient fiber in your diet, if you do not suffer from depression or reduced food intake, you will have a normal bowel habit that is really essential to health. As we grow older, unfortunately, we gradually lose the density of our bone. We develop osteoporosis and our bone become fragile. However, we can maintain the bone health for a longer period of time if we include fibers in our diet. Fibers increase the expression of calcium-binding proteins, degrade the phytic acid that forms a complex with minerals that are necessary for bone development. Fibers are also needed for the maintenance of the health of the nervous system. Fibers also protect against development of diabetes. Fibers also have significant beneficial effects on the function of the pancreas, as well as insulin sensitivity and adiposity. People who use fibers, they prevent the development of glucose intolerance, since fibers improves glycemia and insulin sensitivity, both helping non-diabetic and diabetic individuals. Fibers are essential for lowering the risk of heart disease and myocardial infarct. Fibers lower serum LDL cholesterol concentrations without impacting the HDL, or the good cholesterol, or triacylglycerol concentrations. The consumption of fibers also reduces the risk of developing cancer. For every 10 gram of fiber, there is a 10% reduced risk of development of colorectal cancer, and a 5% fall in the risk for the development of breast cancer. For this reason, not including fibers in our diet is a big mistake. Although the lifespan of an individual to some extent is at the mercy of the genetic makeup of that individual, it can also be controlled by the diet. It has been shown in many different organisms, calorie restriction can increase the lifespan. For example, in mice, a decrease by 65% in calorie intake is associated with a 50% increase in lifespan. If fibers are used as food, since they do not have much calories, they can decrease the calorie intake of an individual and also correspondingly increase the lifespan of that person. This slide summarizes some and not all of the health effects of dietary fibers. Dietary fibers ensure the normal functioning of many different organs, whether it is GI tract, bone, immune system, or central nervous system. They also reduce the risk of disease, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, improvement in the bowel habits, and improvement in our mood. They can be used as a substitute for food that can lead to weight loss. It is my view that we have to start a third revolution in food industry. As we look at the consequences of taking natural food, we realize that natural food is not necessarily having good impact on our health and our lifespan. Food has many side effects: food intolerance, foodborne infection, foodborne allergies, food poisoning, food-induced cancer, food spoilage, obesity, shortening of life. These are just some of the consequences of consumption of food. It is now clear that if we reduce our calorie consumption and food consumption, we will have a longer and healthier life. We no longer have to be at the mercy of nature, and from now forward, it is my anticipation that within the next 5 to 10 years, we will have an abundance of designer food, foods that look like and taste like real food, but they do not have the harmful substances that are included in natural food. As a physician and scientist, I have dedicated my life to the extension of life, have formed a non-profit organization, and run the Research Institute in Aging and Cancer. Since calorie restriction is associated with life extension, then it is obvious to me that we have to start on a path to make life extension for the mankind a reality. And as initial stepping stone for that futuristic fiber food, we at the Zero Calorie and Me are offering a variety of foods that you can include in your diet without the fear of having and adding calories to your diet. This way, you get the entire fiber requirement that you need every day, get the benefit that it offers. At the same time, it doesn't add to your calorie, it doesn't add to your weight. The food that we offer does not have carbohydrate, saturated or unsaturated fat, or protein, salt, or sugar. It's simply made of fibers, flavoring, and seasoning. I highly recommend that you start obtaining your daily requirement of fibers from us, since entire proceeds of your purchase is going to be used in order to solve the mystery of aging and hopefully making the idea of reversal of aging a reality within a decade at our Frontiers in Bioscience Research Institute in Aging and Cancer. We are now continuing our applied research in order to complement the fiber foods to include all the necessary requirements of our daily life, and that includes proteins, vitamins, minerals, some carbohydrates, and unsaturated fat. Such future food, therefore, will be completely supplementing our needs without reliance on food that is derived from nature.